instance, they're painting the case that this is just a boat, almost like a tourism boat, or fishermen is what they've been calling it. Again, words matter. These were shipwrecked sailors, if you heard that last gentleman. So the words and the context of what the Democrats are doing here is they're painting a picture of innocence with drug-running cartels in their speedboats that are coming to American shores. It makes no sense why the Democrats are wanting to partner with the Venezuela, or have sympathies at least, with the Venezuelan drug cartels. But it does. Over the last 3 weeks, the Democrats have had a full court press going after Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump's Secretary of War. The question is why? And I have a theory that I think you're going to want to listen to. First off, let's establish the facts. That 3 weeks ago, the Seditious Six, led by Senator Mark Kelly out of Arizona, specifically went in planting the seeds within the military to have morality and questioning the legality of orders, and telling the military members specifically to not follow orders if they feel in their heart of hearts that there may be a moral or legal issue. This is sedition by Mark Kelly. He knows it, and Pete Hegseth knows it. But now the question is this: what's with the recent love affair and defense that the liberals have had with the actions that Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth have taken specifically off the coast of Venezuela in blowing up the drug runners? There's a theory to this, and I think it's going to make a lot of sense. But first, let's take a moment to look at what's happening specifically with the words and the position statements from the left, because it's going to give you an important piece of the puzzle as to where they want to go with this. Let's listen in to what they're saying this morning.
I don't want to get specific here, but there was no radio. There were two individuals clinging to flotsam. That's what there was. There wasn't weaponry of any kind. There wasn't a radio. There was no means for them to communicate other than the fact that the fire and the smoke was fairly well visible for a long distance around, but there was no radio.
Just a quick interruption from the story. If you're an America First voter and you love President Trump, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel. If you could also like this video or leave a comment down below, all of that goes a long way to telling the algorithm to boost us. Believe me, the liberals, the YouTube algorithm, and everybody that isn't America First is trying to suppress our voice again. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now back to the story.
Right to our top story, where lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have been raising questions about the Trump administration's deadly boat strike campaign. And yesterday, they finally got some answers. During a briefing with top military officials, a group of congressional leaders viewed unedited footage of that highly scrutinized September 2nd attack for the first time. It's the so-called double tap strike that killed Shipwreck. Yesterday, they finally got some answers. During a briefing with top military officials, a group of congressional leaders viewed unedited footage of that highly scrutinized September 2nd attack for the first time. It's the and yesterday, they finally got Road, columnist and associate editor at the Washington Post, David Ignatius, and managing editor at The Bulwark, Sam Stein, is with us this morning. So let's get right to our top story, where lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have been raising questions about the Trump administration's deadly boat strike campaign. And yesterday, they finally got some answers. During a briefing with top military officials, a group of congressional leaders viewed unedited footage of that highly scrutinized September 2nd attack for the first time. It's the so-called double tap strike that killed shipwrecked survivors who were still seen clinging to broken wreckage, alleged drug boat wreckage after the initial impact. Multiple members described watching the survivors holding onto the capsized vessel as they were attacked again. The top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee.
It's important to see the words here in both the Washington Post and the previous article that they put up. And obviously you can expect nothing less than crap from Mika. But in this instance, they're painting the case that this is just a boat, almost like a tourism boat, or fishermen is what they've been calling it. These are drug runners, and the drug runners are responsible for a tremendous amount of money laundering, human trafficking, and destruction within the United States. And not only our children, but people of all ages and the addiction problems that they're contributing to. So just flipping a boat, right? If you look at the Washington Post hit here, or in the previous last 30 seconds with Mika making the case that, this is a double tap on a boat. No, it's a drug running boat that's part of the Venezuelan cartel. Incidentally, a cartel that Donald Trump has made into he deemed them to be a terrorist cartel, because they are. And that's going to be the catch where the Democrats are walking into here. And pay attention to the words in the next minute or two as you hear these pundits trying to make the case that these are alleged drug runners and this is a boat or a fisherman, and that there's people that need to be considered, right, as far as the downstream effects of, the family and the children of these people that were affected in this flipped boat. These are drug cartel members, and they're going after the heart, the culture, and the essence of what makes America great, which is our children. Mika, don't lose sight of that as you go through your pundits in the next minute.
Congressman Adam Smith of Washington tells MS Now the justification given for that follow-up strike was that drugs could still be under the piece of boat the survivors were clinging to in the water, leaving officials concerned the men could continue the mission. Lawmakers overall emerged from the meeting split along party lines. Republicans largely said they were content with the explanation provided by Admiral Frank M. Bradley, the commander who oversaw the attack, while Democrats said they had only grown more concerned. Members from both parties did say that Admiral Bradley told them he had not received an order to kill everybody, but then their accounts differed starkly from there.
I saw two survivors trying to flip a boat loaded with drugs down for the United States, back over, so they could stay in the fight. And potentially, given all the context we heard, of other narco-terrorist boats in the area coming to their aid to recover their cargo and recover those narco-terrorists. And just like you would blow up a boat off of the Somali coast or the Yemeni coast, and you'd come back and strike it again if it still had terrorists and it still had explosives or missiles, Admiral Bradley and Secretary Hegseth did exactly what we would expect them to do.
What I saw in that room was one of the most troubling things I've seen in my time in public service. You have two individuals in clear distress without any means of locomotion, with a destroyed vessel, who are killed by the United States. Under the DoD manual for abiding by the laws of armed conflict, the specific example given of an impermissible action is attacking a shipwreck. Any American who sees the video that I saw will see the United States military attacking shipwrecked sailors. People will someday see this video and they will see that that video shows, if you don't have the broader context, an attack on shipwrecked sailors.
All right, I want to turn to David Rode here. I mean, if we look at...
By the way, again, words matter. These were shipwrecked sailors, if you heard that last gentleman. So the words and the context of what the Democrats are doing here is they're painting a picture of innocence with drug-running cartels in their speedboats that are coming to American shores. These are stranded sailors. These are shipwrecked sailors. This is a boat, not a drug-running boat. This, actually, earlier in the week, we were hearing some of the fake news media saying that these were fishermen and that their families were distraught and destroyed over the fact that they were blown up by a missile from a Black Hawk. The reality of the matter is that these weren't just stranded sailors. He knows that, but there's a key reason why the Democrats are going down this road. You have to listen to these words, though, first.
At the initial strike, we do have the video of that, right? And we've all seen it, right? Here it is. So we're talking about potential war crimes here. And I'm not trying to be silly, but I have to ask you, where exactly was this? How far away from land was this? What was the possibility that these two survivors could paddle away and continue their drug operation? I mean, are we kidding me? Is this guy serious, talking about the potential that these two survivors could continue the operation? I mean, we're not stupid, but I have to ask. Could they have paddled to shore with the rest of the drugs?
No, and essentially this is what we heard from the Democrats who viewed this. The boat had
The Republicans can't see this?
This is our partisan divide. The boat had been blown in half at least. The front half is still floating, so there is no motor. They are very far from it. This was carried out far from land just for the way they do these kind of overt operations.
What are the chances they were Olympians and they could swim to shore with the drugs on their backs?
Very few that I know of. No, I know. And
she's not serious. This is ridiculous, and this is also why Morning Joe's ratings are in the tank. But making a joke like this about something as serious as drug-running boats that are bringing fentanyl and cocaine into the country is something, again, that's abhorrent and that Mika should be ashamed of. But she's not. She doesn't even know what ashamed is.
Then the second thing was that before this briefing, there was repeated statements that they had radios and that they were radioing maybe nearby boats and that they were going to come help them. And again, some focus on the amount of drugs somehow possibly trapped underneath that floating, flipped over, hull. And so in the briefing, they didn't have radios. They had no communications, and there were no other boats in the area. So they were, every sign points to they were trying to save their own lives, not rejoin. And it's not the fight. Rejoin their criminal effort to make money and smuggle drugs to the United States. That's terrible. That's criminal. But they aren't. This is the broader issue of they're not fighting. They're not combatants.
Right,
they're not shooting at American soldiers.
Richard, that's how you.
Right. So this is important. We're going to stop this hit piece on Morning Joe right here because there's a really, really important video next I want to show you. But look at the tone and the tenor. Again, this is a boat strike. These are fishermen. These are stranded sailors. And why would we go after and finish them off, right? These are survivors that are just trying to cling for their life. These are drug cartel members that are part of a terrorist organization and that they deserve to be killed and sunk, quite frankly, to the bottom of the ocean. But not according to Mika. It makes no sense why the Democrats are wanting to partner with the Venezuela, or have sympathies, at least, with the Venezuelan drug cartels. But it does. But before we get to that, let me show you where the Democrats have been as a platform, and specifically what Joe Biden said when he was a senator, as it relates to our responsibility and actions and efforts against drug cartels. And you're going to see this, not only where they were years ago, but to now where they are now. This pivot is inexplainable, but I'm going to put it all together for you in just a bit. Let's get to Joe Biden's hit piece first. So this is Joe Biden in 1989 when he was a senator, and he specifically addresses the effort and the obligation that the U.S. government has as it relates to drug cartels. Let's have a listen.
Every president for the past 2 decades, Democrat and Republican alike, has declared war on drugs. And each of them has lost that war and lost it miserably. They lost because they attempted to deal with only part of the drug problem. They lost because their initiatives were pulled apart by bureaucratic squabbling among their advisors. They lost because they always did too little and they did it too late. We don't oppose the president's plan. All we want to do is strengthen it. We don't doubt his resolve. All we want to do is stiffen it. The trouble is that the president's proposals are not big enough to deal with the problem. We think we should do more to stem the flow of drugs across our borders, and we think we should go one step further.
What's that, Joe?
Let's go after the drug lords where they live. With an international strike force. There must be no safe haven for these narco-terrorists. Wow. And they must know it. We have to lock up the dealers for a long, long time. And we have to attack the source from which the drugs come. And we have to do that not a piece at a time, but all at once. And we have to do it now. And there's not any reason why we can't do that. We have the power, we have the money, and we have the knowledge.
So why this change from Joe Biden? As you can see, this is in 1989. So this is where the Democrat Party was as far as their talking points as it relates to the drug cartels. In the previous hit piece, you saw where Mika and our pundits are, where they have sympathies for the stranded survivors. The shift is incredible. It's obviously anti-American, but the question is why? One of the reasons is because the progressives and their talking points have hijacked the Democrat Party. This is a perfect example. This is where Joe Biden was in 1989, where he's saying we have to attack the drug cartels. Not just when they come to our homeland, but go to where they are. He was making the case that the Republicans made just yesterday. Now let's have a look at where the Republicans are with this Venezuelan drug boat issue, and then I'm going to combine it all, and you're going to see exactly why the Democrats are doing what they're doing against Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth.
Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy and Homeland Security, Stephen Miller. All right, Miller, have you ever heard of a controversy like this in your life?
No, this is the first time I can ever think where a major political party has sided with narco-trafficking, murdering, terrorist scum. You know, you play one of those clips from a Democrat who said, oh, there's no such thing as a narco-terrorist. They're just narco-persons. The
words matter.
ISIS and these narco-terrorists in our hemisphere use the same tactics. They use rape as a weapon. They skin people alive. They cut off their heads. They burn them to death. These narco-terrorists, if a politician opposes them, they kidnap their family. If they don't give them what they want, they murder their family. You can go to the Border Patrol here in the United States and you can say, draw me a map of the border, and on the Mexican side, tell me which cartel controls every inch of territory. And the border agents can literally say, mile by mile, which cartel controls which section of the border. Not the Mexican government, they don't control it, which cartel. When President Trump declared these organizations foreign terrorist organizations, that wasn't just a talking point. That wasn't just a buzzword. It was a promise from this president to use hard American power to kill and to stop these terrorists, these enemies of the United States, from killing our families, from killing our children, from taking over our communities. And that's
how is that any different? What Stephen Miller is saying here, how is that any different than what Joe Biden was saying back in 1989? I gave you the proof. It's right there. He said to attack them, to go after them, to put them on their heels. How is that any different than what Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump are doing right now? It's not. It's not. So the American people are with Donald Trump and are exactly on message with what Stephen Miller is saying here, that these are narco-terrorists. And these are going after our children. We'll do everything we can with both our Department of Defense and law enforcement to go after them and to kill them, which is exactly what we're doing.
That's what President Trump is doing.
And we have some breaking news from ABC. Listen to what they just reported about an hour ago. Roll it.
And tonight, new information. According to a source familiar with the incident, the two survivors climbed back onto the boat after the initial strike. They were believed to be potentially in communication with others and salvaging some of the drugs. Because of that, it was determined they were still in the fight and valid targets. A JAG officer was also giving legal advice.
So shockingly, this is coming in from ABC, but did you hear Mika talk about that? No. Did you hear the senator talk about that from his briefing? No. What these people were doing were they were reorganizing, trying to salvage the drugs so that the other boats around them could come by, pick them up, and take these drugs on down the road. That's what was happening. So you saw this in intentional omission from Mika on the talking points of the survivors and the stranded sailors and the fishermen. It's pathetic. It's pathetic, but it makes sense. And I'm going to, again, connect the dots for you in just a minute.
This backs up the entire second strike.
Yes, I mean, it just doesn't get more crystal clear than that. The mission is take out the boat, stop the drugs, keep this vessel and its cargo from reaching our shore using lethal means. And our amazing military, the heroes of the United States Armed Forces, did exactly that. President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, and this entire government are committed to finally using our military to defend our people, our borders, our family, our culture, our history, our heritage, to defend the United States.
Exactly.
We're not going off running around the Middle East trying to build democracies in caves and deserts and in distant sands that have never known democracy.
This is such a critical point where Stephen Miller's going, right? The neocons, that were leading both parties, right, outside of Donald Trump's first term, were creating these peace efforts and toppling governments all over the Middle East for the last 35, 40 years. That's not what Donald Trump's foreign policy stance is. He's going to protect American interests first, protect our homeland first, protect our children and our culture first. And that's very unpopular with the military-industrial complex and the neocons in Washington.
We're using the military to protect American security, American prosperity, American lives right here where we live, where our children live, Jesse.
Well, Madda wants a land war. She says we have to follow these drugs back to the source of origin and take it out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think she realized that she walked herself with that
right into her argument.
With that very warped brain of hers. She walked herself right into the right answer by accident. It happens sometimes, even with the brain-addled Democrats. She said, go back to the source and take it out there. Well, as you point out, the source is Colombia.
Right.
The source is Venezuela. The source is Mexico. That's what the president has been talking about, which is what we're going to use, whatever resources we need to use as a country to make sure that these narcotics and the terrorists who traffic them cannot threaten our people. They're in all 50 states. For 4 years, Biden let these monsters cross the border freely. They're operating now in all 50 states. They are controlling the flow of drugs, weapons, gangs, criminal activity, sex trafficking, human trafficking, and labor trafficking all across this country. We're getting them out, and we're attacking them at the source. President Trump is saving American lives.
So we are saving lives. That's exactly right. And Stephen Miller's talking points, again, they're no different than where Joe Biden was and the Democrat Party was in 1989. But the question is, why the change? Why the change? And why have we seen the seditious six making their case to the military members to have this bleeding heart and morality issue and don't follow any illegal orders coming in from Pete Hegseth, right? We saw that with Mark Kelly just 3 weeks ago. And now the articles of impeachment were filed by this guy just yesterday against Pete Hegseth. So why are we seeing this full frontal effort against Pete Hegseth with these articles of impeachment? So this is the Democrat strategy that you've seen developing over the last 3 weeks, and it's critical because it makes all the sense in the world. This is from Andrew Colvett over at Turning Point USA. So let me go through these points because it will make all the sense once you see it. First step, and this is what we saw in the last 6 weeks, release an oddly timed video including 6 Democrats warning service members to defy military orders. That was the Seditious Six effort. Step 2, play victim while on the media circuit after being called out for their seditious behavior. That was again what we saw 2 weeks ago. Step 3, publish a WAPO story with anonymous sources alleging war crimes by the Secretary of Defense. That's where we are earlier this week. Step 4, sucker establishment Republicans into launching a bipartisan oversight into lawful strikes against narco-terrorists using legacy media fake news. That's where we were yesterday and this morning. Now step 5, impeachments, the media circus, and court-martials, and a potential for a color revolution. This is what they're doing. Hakeem, Chuck, Nancy, AOC, they know what they're doing. These impeachment articles are going to go nowhere against Pete Hegseth. But what they're trying to do is to go after Donald Trump vis-a-vis Pete Hegseth and set up a narrative for the midterms. Remember, the midterms are just a couple months away. So this message of a war criminal and this message of war crimes by Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump is what they're trying to latch onto. And remember, from a political strategy sense, they're playing now to the extremes of their party. That's why you're seeing the drum beats and this coordinated media effort with Mika and friends. But what they're going to do is they're going to get this and try to get this. They already did because they filed the articles of impeachment, but get this moniker on Pete, let that bleed off on Donald Trump. Now they've got what they want. This is what they were trying to do with the felon, right? And in having all the DAs try to get Donald Trump in jail. They knew that they weren't going to get him there, but they wanted the message to be able to run back to the independent voter, which is the key piece. So where's the independent voter with their efforts right now? They're totally tuned out. The soccer moms in middle America are busy, right? But they're going to be paying attention to the midterm votes and midterm platforms here in the coming months. So what the Democrats are doing is to try to get their message together, to try to get a moniker onto Donald Trump so that they can make him a war criminal and have impeachment articles for Donald Trump going into the midterms. Now, I'll end with this. What happens if the Democrats are successful in taking back the House in the midterms, which is a very real possibility? Obviously, you're going to have Donald Trump lame ducked as a president in the last 2 years of his presidency. What you're going to see is a relentless barrage of articles of impeachment that will make Donald Trump's first term look like the kiddie pool. So that's where we are. That's why you see the seditious six and their movements in the last 6 weeks and trying to get the military to do what they're doing. And this is exactly why the mainstream media, the deep state, Mika, and the Democrat Progressive Party are doing what they're doing against Pete Hegseth. It will not be successful. Pete Hegseth did nothing wrong. Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump are doing nothing dissimilar to what Joe Biden wanted to do in 1989. But none of that matters now. The only thing that matters is going into the midterms with Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth being war criminals. That's where we are. So let me know. Do you agree with my take in trying to put the piece of the puzzle together with trying to, again, figure out these sympathies that are misplaced by the Democrats with the Venezuelan drug cartels? Why is that happening? Why did they file articles of impeachment against Pete Hegseth? That makes no sense, but it does when you see the 6 steps. And we're actually on step 5 as we speak to the Democrat strategy. Let me know in the comments down below. And incidentally, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do so. We're doing everything we can to get Donald Trump and an America First message out on all the social platforms. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, TikTok, and Instagram. Follow us. Believe me, each one of their separate algorithms are doing everything they can to silence the conservative independent media, just like us. Every single day, we're fighting the algorithm. So your liking, subscribing, and commenting on videos just like this will help us get the message out, help the channel grow, and ultimately help educate some of those independent voters that the Democrats are going to be going after here with their war criminal moniker. If you enjoyed this, leave a like, drop us a comment down below, and we'll see you in the next video.
Okay, let's go.